and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Hira Mustafa and these are the headlines. At least 14 Afghan security personnel have been killed in a Taliban attack on a district police headquarters in the Faryab province. A provincial council member said the police chief for Kaisar district is among those killed. He added the Taliban have also taken 37 security personnel as captive. At least 17 people, including children, have been killed in a missile attack on a gas station in eastern Yemen's Marib province. The Marib's governor said dozens of people have been wounded, blaming Houthis for the attack. Meanwhile, Saudi-led Arab coalition says it has intercepted a Houthi drone launch towards the southern city of Khamis Mushat. However, the rebel group claims to have hit intended targets at Saudi Arabia's King Khalid Air Base in the city. President Joe Biden says the United States does not seek conflict with Russia. In an op-ed piece for the Washington Post, Biden reiterated Washington's desire for a stable and predictable relationship with Moscow. However, he added that the U.S. will not hesitate to respond to Russia's potential harmful activities. India has reported over 114,000 new coronavirus infections overnight, the lowest in 2 months. The country has recorded nearly 2,700 deaths in the past 24 hours. Pakistan has registered 76 deaths and more than 1,600 COVID-19 cases in the past 24 hours. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 3.7 million lives and infected over 172 million people. Well, those were the headlines. News in detail coming after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now the news in detail. At least 14 Afghan security personnel have been killed in a Taliban attack on a district police headquarters in the Faryab province. A provincial council member said the police chief for Kaisar district is among those killed. He said the Taliban have also taken 37 security personnel as captive. He added that the police force needs reinforcement as their headquarters is under siege. At least 20 security personnel were reportedly killed yesterday. Violence in Afghanistan has surged in recent months amid the withdrawal of US and NATO troops. The UN officials have called on the Afghan government and Taliban delegations in Doha to discuss the peace process. Under Secretary General for Safety and Security Gilles Michaud and Special Envoy Deborah Lyons were representing the UN side. The United Nations Assistance Mission in Afghanistan said reduction in violence and safety of UN's aid workers were also discussed. Meanwhile, U.S. Special Envoy Zalmay Khalilzad will meet with Afghan political leaders and women to discuss peace. The State Department said Khalilzad and the delegation are visiting Kabul, Doha and the region. It added Khalilzad will also meet with leaders from regional countries to discuss the peace process, trade and development. At least 17 people, including children, have been killed in a missile attack on a gas station in eastern Yemen's Marib province. The Marib's governor said dozens of people have been wounded, blaming Houthis for the attack. He says several cars, including the ambulances that arrived to rush the injured to hospitals, also caught fire. The Houthis have not yet commented on the attack. Meanwhile, Saudi-led Arab coalition says it has intercepted a Houthi drone launched towards the southern city of Khamis Mushat. However, the rebel group claims to have hit intended targets at Saudi Arabia's King Khalid Air Base in the city. Earlier, Houthis, a spokesperson, said an Omani delegation has arrived in Yemeni capital Sana'a for peace talks. However, U.S. Special Envoy for Yemen, Tim Lenderking, slammed Houthis and accused them of failing to reach an urgently needed ceasefire. In Burkina Faso, the number of people killed in a gun attack on a village has risen to 132, including 7 children. The UN has condemned the attack and called on countries to step up the fight against violent extremism. Burkina Faso's authorities say armed assailants attacked the Solan village in Yaga province, which borders Niger. Government spokesman said another 40 residents were also wounded, while the gunmen also burned homes and a market. Burkina Faso's President Roch-Marc Christian Kabore called the killings barbaric and urged national unity. No group has claimed responsibility for the attack so far. In Nigeria, at least 88 people have been killed in an attack by armed bandits in Western Kebbi State. Police spokesman in the region said an unidentified gunman conducted attacks in 8 areas of the region. He says security forces were dispatched to the region and investigations were launched. Meanwhile, Nigeria's media said armed bandits attacked a vigilante group which was created to assist the security agencies to secure the volatile areas. In April, 9 police officers were killed in an attack by gunmen in the state. A U.S.-run diplomatic facility in the Iraqi capital, Baghdad, has been targeted in a rocket strike. An Antwi coalition forces spokesperson in Iraq, Colonel Wayne Maratta, said the rocket impacted near Baghdad Diplomatic Sports Center. He said the attack caused no injuries or damage. No group has claimed responsibility for the attack so far. Meanwhile, northern Iraq's regional officials said 3 people have been killed in an airstrike on a camp housing thousands of displaced. This comes as Iraq and the U.S. agreed on a plan to redeploy coalition troops outside the war-torn country. President Joe Biden says the United States does not see conflict with Russia. In an op-ed piece for the Washington Post, Biden reiterated the U.S. desire for a stable and predictable relationship with Moscow. He said the 2 countries can work together on issues like strategic stability and arms control. However, Biden added that the U.S. will not hesitate to respond to Russia's potential harmful activities. Biden said he imposed meaningful consequences for behaviors that violate U.S. sovereignty, including electoral meddling. The U.S. president said he will underscore West's commitment to human rights during his meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. The 2 leaders are set to meet in Geneva on 16th of June. The U.S. says it is ending a long-standing practice of secretly obtaining reporters' records during probes into classified information leaks. This comes after recent revelations that the Trump administration secretly obtained phone and email records from a number of journalists. The Justice Department said it has completed a review of pending compulsory requests from reporters in leak investigations. In a statement, the department said it will not seek compulsory legal process to obtain source information from journalists. Meanwhile, the White House said issuing subpoenas for reporters' records is not consistent with the Biden administration's policy. Earlier, President Biden said he will not allow the Justice Department to seize the reporters' data, describing the practice as wrong. India has reported over 114,000 new coronavirus infections overnight, the lowest in the 2 months. The country has recorded nearly 2,700 deaths in the past 24 hours. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 3.7 million lives and infected over 172 million people. More in this report. At the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic, Europe was battered as hard as any other continent. However, the region has fared well in its vaccination drive. Italy, which was the first European state to face the huge consequences of the pandemic, has administered record vaccinations in 1 day. Belgium has announced to begin vaccinating 16 to 17-year-olds against COVID-19 from the next month. Meanwhile, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson called on G7 to make a commitment to vaccinate the entire world against COVID-19 by the end of 2022. Over in the U.S., the country has so far registered more than 33 million coronavirus cases, while its death toll is approaching 600,000. The U.S. authorities have announced to keep the foreign tourists away from beaches on the D-Day anniversary.
Donc là, l'hôtel est fermé depuis le 1er.
The hotel has been closed since March 1st last year. So we are reopening mid-June for a few clients who are attempting to cross the Atlantic because as of June 9, the borders will be reopening a bit. But these are people who don't know how to organize at the last minute. So if they're told that they can start traveling again from June 9, they won't all be arriving suddenly in June. So we'll have a few ones coming, but they're really an exception.
Meanwhile, the U.S. will donate 750,000 COVID-19 vaccine doses to Taiwan, offering a much-needed boost to the island's fight against the pandemic. Ministers from the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Trade Group have also agreed to speed up the transit of COVID-19 vaccines and related goods at ports. In Australia, contact tracers in Victoria are trying to find the source of 2 COVID-19 cases which have been highly infectious in the community. In Pakistan, 76 people have lost their lives to the coronavirus over the past 24 hours. The Health Ministry said the countrywide death toll has surged to 21,265. The ministry has logged more than 1,600 cases overnight. The number of confirmed cases has topped 932,000. Just over 3,400 people are in intensive care units. A total of 8.2 million vaccines have been administered in Pakistan. In India, hundreds of farmers marched towards a police station in Haryana to protest against police raids. This comes after the authorities arrested 3 of their colleagues and a politician abused the farmers. Protesting farmers demanded an apology from Devendra Singh Babli, whose political party is allied with the ruling BJP. Earlier, 2 FIRs had also been registered against the protesters over the clashes. For over 6 months, farmers have been protesting against new agricultural laws, which they say will destroy their livelihoods. However, the Narendra Modi-led government claims that the new laws will modernize India's agriculture. In India, fishermen in Thiruvananthapuram city are struggling to survive after Cyclone Tauktae destroyed their livelihood. More than 150 were killed after the cyclone hit India's west coast. This report has more. Cyclone Tauktae dissipated last month, but fishermen are still finding it hard to overcome its destruction. With rough seas and banned fishing activities, the fishermen are having a tough time with no roof over their heads. Many have been left without basic supplies like food and water.
My 2 children are differently abled. We never thought that the cyclone would destroy our house, and now we are living on rent with the children. We never thought that such a cyclone would come and destroy everything in 5 minutes.
The cyclone made landfall in the western state of Gujarat. It devastated power supply in 2,400 villages in the state as thousands of electricity pylons were damaged. After their houses were ravaged in the storm, the cyclone hit fishermen and their families were shifted to relief camps.
It has been 1 month and we have not gone for catching fish because of the heavy storm. We are a total of 60 to 65 people living in St. Antony School. I lost all my property. The district collector has given us a warning that we should not go fishing until 9 June. So, no boat went in the sea.
The fishing community is desperate for funds after the cyclone damaged around 1,000 fishing boats and harbor infrastructure. Candidates in Iran's presidential election have traded strong barbs in a live debate accusing each other of treason or of lack of education. The presidential debate for the June 18 elections was focused on policies to run an economy devastated by 3 years of U.S. sanctions. The candidates offered 2 divergent visions on how the country should be run. The 5 hardline candidates attacked the 8-year performance of outgoing pragmatist President Hassan Rouhani, while the leading moderate candidate, former central bank chief Abdul Nasser Hemati, blamed hardliners for heightened tensions with the West. More news stories coming up after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Lebanese Prime Minister designate Saad al-Hariri has urged the government to pay its dues to the special tribunal for the country. The tribunal was set up to prosecute those behind the 2005 assassination of Hariri's father, Rafiq Hariri. It is 51% funded by voluntary contributions and 49% by the government. But the tribunal faces the threat of closure after July if the funding shortage is not resolved. The closure will prevent its work that is vital for putting an end to political assassinations in Lebanon. Last year, the tribunal convicted in absentia a former Hezbollah member for the bombing that killed Hariri and 21 others. Belarus has responded to the EU curbs, saying Minsk has prepared a set of counter-sanctions against the bloc. Prime Minister Roman Golovchenko said the West will not introduce any more sanctions on Belarus now. Golovchenko said the damage to the Belarusian economy from the Western sanctions could amount to 2.9% of their GDP. He said as a response, the EU will lose Belarusian market as Minsk will shift from European technology to Asian as an alternative. Meanwhile, Belarusian opposition leader Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya demanded the West to impose further sanctions against Minsk. She demanded that not only businesses, but also individuals from the government should be hit by Western sanctions. The EU is expected to agree by June 21st a smaller sanctions list on individuals and 2 entities as a quick intermediary response. The residents of Venice have protested against the visit of the first cruise ship since the easing of coronavirus from the city port. The protesters called on the government of Venice to act on its earlier agreed ban to big vessels. The protesters rallied on land and on small boats, fluttering flags saying no big ships against the entry of large vessels into Venice. They said large vessels and ships cause great environmental hazards of pollution and underwater erosion of the city's foundations.
The thing is, we are still here because in spite of this decree, the cruise ship, these giant cruise ships are still gonna cross the Giudecca Channel. The reason we are here is because we are citizens of Venice and we are against this passage, but we are also against some type of like a tourism model that is destroying the city and is pushing out residents and people that want to live here.
Earlier, Venice announced a ban on large vessels, including cruise ships and shipping containers, from entering the city amid concerns. And now moving on, in Venezuela, members of a ceremonial brotherhood have called for the end to COVID-19 pandemic in the country and the world through a dancing ritual. Details in this report. Since the 1700s, people in towns along Venezuela's central coast dress as masked devils for a ritual. During the annual Corpus Christi celebration, they surrender to God as part of a symbolic victory of good over evil. The festivity mixes indigenous African and Spanish traditions.
We must ask the most holy sacrament of the altar for disappearance of the pandemic throughout the world. Because what we are experiencing is bad for everyone. So we ask the most holy sacrament with all our heart. We do this so that the tradition never wanes.
Residents play drums for dancers who dressed as horses, dogs and cats with belts tied to their waists. Authorities permit the festival because the devils wear masks under their decorative costumes and the distancing measures are respected in the ceremony.
We have had difficult times. We have fought with the economic problem, we have fought with the pandemic, we have fought with the political problem, with the social issue, and even like that we continue to pay worship and grace to the most holy sacrament.
UNESCO has declared the dancing devils part of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity in 2012. Now it's time to have a look at the weather update across the globe. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.